We're now streaming.
There we go.
So, welcome everybody. I want to welcome you all to the meeting of the St. Catharines Heritage Advisory Committee for February 28th, 2025. The time is now 2:36 according to my clock. We begin this gathering by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of the Indigenous people. Do we have additions or deletions to be made to the agenda? Lauren.
Hi. So we're going to be adding an update to the downtown HCD study from James, and also an update on the 33 Lock Street demolition application that you guys saw last or the month before. There was a heritage grant application circulated, but that will be deferred to next month, so we won't be talking about that today at the request of the applicant. And just really briefly, I'd like to introduce our new planning student, Nashida Rahim. She's going to be helping us out with the minutes and helping us out with some designations, or a designation as part of the designations committee.
And the grant was for the B'nai Israel stained glass? Okay.
Yes, yep. So, yeah. And the Howard has asked to defer it to next month because he couldn't attend today. So,
okay. Yep. So can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Maria, I saw your hand go up first, I think. And all in favor? Okay. Motion to adopt the minutes of the previous meeting from oh so long ago, December the 19th. Do you have any questions, comments, changes to be made to the minutes? Maria?
The last time I looked at them, I seem to recall that there was an S, the letter S missing from the end of my surname.
Ah, okay.
Minor.
A minor typo?
Yes.
Any other changes or observations about the minutes? If not, then I guess we would have to have a motion to adopt the amended minutes of December 19th. John Crawley's making the motion. And all in favor? Okay. Declarations of interest, do we have any? I guess Andrew with your Pelham Road property. Lorraine, is your hand up?
I was trying to get in there before we looked at declarations of interest. I have the edits for the previous meeting from November. I will forward those to Lauren after this meeting.
Oh, okay, thanks. Okay, then I guess we're moving on to the business of 8.1 Pelham Road. Lauren, I guess we'll turn it over to you.
All right, thanks everyone. I'm just going to share my screen here. There we go. All right. So good afternoon, everyone. I'll be presenting the 906 evaluation for 1 Pelham Road. Here we got this. So the subject property located at what is now 145 St. Paul Crescent historically consists of several properties, including 143, 145, 147 St. Paul Crescent, and 1 Pelham Road. And I've kind of included this kind of overview of our from kind of our GIS, where you can see the property lines that historically separated these buildings. So here is 1 Pelham Road here, and this is 143, 145, and 147 St. Paul Crescent. The property is located at the intersection of Pelham Road and St. Paul Crescent, which is the historical alignment of St. Paul Street along this area. The property was annexed into what is now known as 145 St. Paul Crescent, and as a result, it inadvertently inherited the listed status of the adjoining properties. So these buildings were on the Heritage Register. When these properties were sold, they all became annexed into one large property, and One Pelham was included in that. Prior to this annexation, One Pelham Road was not considered for heritage listing or designation, but the property owner has applied for a demolition permit and not quite sure what to do. In response, we just put together a 906 evaluation to determine if the structure does meet the criteria for designation under the OHA. And today I'll just take you through that evaluation and some of the background information just to show you that we've considered the property as it is. This is just an extract from the plan of subdivision for this area. It's the Fairmont subdivision, a part of the Merritt property. And here you can see this kind of corner lot here, and that's where 143, 145, and 147 St. Paul Crescent has historically existed. Here you can see the old alignment of St. Paul. And then lot 17, this piece right here, that's where One Pelham is located, and you kind of see how they're historically have been separate properties. So the structure this is the structure at One Pelham Road. It's a modest 1.5-story front gabled frame house built circa 1915. The design is simple and utilitarian with no distinctive architectural elements that sets it apart from any other of the homes in the area. The exterior consists of, off-white horizontal siding with brown trim. There's a red door entranceway, concrete stoop, 2-panel windows within the gable ends. The roof is steeply pitched and covered in brown asphalt shingles. The foundation is parched concrete, which you can kind of see here. And inside, you can see that it's also concrete inside, consistent with homes built during that period. The interior is a straightforward layout with hardwood floors, simple trim, and minimal ornamentation. So here is the front elevation from the street, the side north elevation. This is what you see from 145 St. Paul Crescent. The south side elevation, which is, there's a fence here, and then there's a school property right over here. So it's kind of narrow, so you can't really get in there, but then that's that. And then there's the rear elevation, which again is kind of a mirror of the front elevation. So I'll move forward to the historical information that we're able to dig up about this building. So the land on which One Pelham Road sits originally was a part of Lot 18, Concession 7 in Grantham Township. It was patented by the Crown to John Hayner in 1797. The Hayner family were early Loyalist settlers and played a role in the region's development. The property was later acquired by the Merritt family, another significant family in the history of St. Catharines. However, the existing structure has no association with either family. And through the land use history, established that there are no direct ties to any sort of significant historical individuals or events. This here shows the 1913 fire insurance plan, and then here is 1921 aerial. You can see here in the fire insurance plan, there's no structure here. And then here in 1921, you can see that it has been constructed. This is consistent with the history of the subdivision being established in 1911. And then we can see that the property was transferred to ownership to John and Emma McLean in 1913. So likely either shortly after that or at some point this building was constructed. So it was circa ish 1915-ish was built. So based on this review, the house doesn't have any sort of strong historical associations or connection to the broader historical themes of St. Catharines. Here's a look at the surrounding context on Pelham Road. So we looked at the surrounding neighborhood and its contextual significance within that area. The area includes a mixture of commercial and residential buildings, all very kind of unornamented and vernacular and kind of consistent with kind of that era of building. The most significant buildings within that landscape are 143, 145, and 147 St. Paul Crescent. They're red brick commercial structures. They do contribute significantly to the historical streetscape. But again, this has been always separate from the history of One Pelham. And I know that I'm going to say it a couple more times, but the proposed demolition doesn't include these structures at all. These buildings are currently being evaluated for designation separately. And that the history is being done separately. The architectural and contextual is all being considered separately by a couple members of the committee and by myself. And so as much as this is obviously significant, a landmark in this area, One Pelham does not contribute to that, the nature of that kind of the historical significance of the property. So to determine whether One Pelham Road, qualifies for designation, we assess the property against OREG 906. Just as a reminder, as of January 1st, 2023, a property must meet at least 2 criteria under 906 to warrant designation. However, this property failed to meet any criteria under 906 and as such does not qualify for heritage designation. Based on these findings, staff have concluded that One Pelham Road does not warrant designation. The structure does not demonstrate any architectural, historical, or contextual significance. And so, it's a bit of a strange situation because of the different addresses and lots. But basically, staff have concluded that the demolition request can be supported, and because the listing was never intended to apply to One Pelham Road. Because I spoke internally to the building department, the demolition permit can be approved for just One Pelham Road. And so no heritage permit is required. So I guess, does anyone have any questions or concerns or, want to discuss the evaluation at all?
Mark?
Yeah, thank you. Just a comment, really. I don't live too far away from that place, and it really is an oddball position for a house. It really only sits in a parking lot and has no contextual significance, like you said. There's nothing around it. There's a school and then a building right in between. It's
so
looks odd as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I'm going to throw this up here if I can. Because a part of the research, we discovered this plan of subdivision, and basically all of these lots kind of in between ended up being the school property. And shortly after the plan was approved, the city or the school board annexed all of this land, and so it's obvious that they constructed this house thinking it was going to be part of a larger community, and it ended up being kind of annexed separately from the school because the school property starts right here, and it just encompasses all this. And it's really a kind of an interesting historical artifact, definitely, Mark. Yeah.
Holly?
Just my question is, because you did refer to a lot of significant people there in your explanation. Are we ever going to be able to view as a committee? We used to go to a site, do a site visit and look at the exterior and possibly the interior. And then we would have a voting our page with our score sheet. Is that structure? We're not doing it that way anymore.
I guess through the chair. So I think a couple of people have made the comment that, you know, we should be either for heritage permit, significant heritage permit applications, or, you know, this kind of designation. We like the committee was interested in coming out. So I think in the future, I mean, I did the site visit for this a while back, but in the future, if there's anything similar, either a designation or a demolition, I can definitely reach out to the committee, let them know when we're going to the site, and if anyone wants to join, I think that'd be interesting. And I know there has been some interest in, you know, something in person to kind of touch base with everyone again.
Well,
And so I
this
think,
happened.
yeah.
This happened on the Main Street one in Port Dalhousie too. The one that was like the log with the logs, the log house. That we didn't get an opportunity to view it, and then demolition permit came about, and demolition permit went through. We used to at least get an opportunity to do a site visit. I just wondered if we're not going to be doing it that format anymore.
Through the chair, I could maybe jump in if Lauren doesn't mind. So the property on Main Street, that the faux log cabin that was there were kind of security or safety issues there with regards to why we weren't able to have everyone on the committee come out to the site. It just wasn't a safe building for anybody to be able to really go near or go into. So that was why we didn't bring everybody out for that one. In terms of the other thing that you mentioned, Holly, was the demolition kind of sheet that or rubric that had been used in the past. If I'm not mistaken, just before I joined the city, the committee decided to kind of put that to the side and not use that anymore to determine demolitions. I think before I arrived, this group was finding that it wasn't working the way that they had hoped it would. And I believe there was a subcommittee maybe that was convened to kind of figure out whether or not that was an appropriate route to go in the future. And then COVID happened, and I think it kind of fell by the wayside. But I think the way that we've been looking at things from going, at least since I've been here, has been to measure everything under Ontario Regulation 906, which is what determines if something merits designation. And so I think that the way that Lauren's gone about doing this work is appropriate, but I definitely understand that, you know, the desire to want to go and see the property in person it's always nicer to see something in 3 dimensions. So definitely understand that, and I think that in the future that's something we'd definitely try to do more of. Thanks, Holly.
Well, thank you for the explanation, James. And just one more question through the chair. Just wanted to ask if this building is being demolished, is it going to be, are they building something new on this site?
So taking into consideration, we usually you consider these things separately, the value from the plans for the site. I do believe that there are there may be plans. I don't yeah, there are plans for the site. I don't but that's something that I guess we speak to Andrew about, or that will come at a future time once it's further along. Yep.
I'd be happy to speak.
Maybe
on
that's
that
okay.
briefly
Yeah,
if
I
you
don't
want.
know. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
No,
I'm sorry, Andrew. I didn't know that was
No.
part of your parcel. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, this is, it's all part of the same property. Yes, that the plan is to, with the extra land in behind the historic buildings to add density there. And that redevelopment will help basically fund the restoration of the front of the property. So that's part of it. And just one other point in terms of your other question, this, one of the differences between this and a normal situation is there is no committee vote in this case. It's not, there's no heritage permit required in this case. That was determined when the city reviewed it, so it's not something that's sort of up for a vote. This is meant to be an information briefing more than anything else. Having said that, anyone, I've mentioned the property in the past, and anyone who would be interested in coming to see is welcome to. There's an open invitation to anyone who's interested. It's pretty cool property, and there's going to be some good things happening there. I wish I could tell you more. We don't know yet. We're doing the evaluation. Although we did recently complete a feasibility study through ERA in Toronto to evaluate whether we can do some affordable housing development there, which looks like it's possible. So we're trying to work that out.
I had just one question about the demolition. Is there anything architectural inside that's going to be salvaged from the house? Like you mentioned, hardwood floors and things like that. Is any of that going to be salvaged and used, say, in the restoration of the St. Paul Street buildings, or is it all just going to end up as landfill?
There's a number of things that are going to be saved. There's some beautiful hardwood doors in there that we're going to grab. There's probably some trim that we're going to save too, although the heritage carpenter I had looked at it told me it's very basic and generic and not worth saving, but we may do it anyway, because you never know. But in terms of reusing it in the older section up front, it's not really suitable. It's different period and different style, and lower end, to be frank.
I mean, at least it's not, completely going to end up as a heap in the landfill someplace. So, and just to go back, sorry, Andrew, you had a.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to go off on another tangent.
Please do. I enjoy your tangents.
Well, no, this is just going back to what James was saying about a subcommittee to take a look at the rating sheets. That was Dr. Bergen and I were going to be taking a look at them, and we were actually sitting down and rethinking the questions and the ratings and so on. And like we said, COVID came along, and that just sort of ended up being, by the wayside. So I don't think that subcommittee is going to be resurrected anytime soon. So unless you want it to be resurrected, and if we want to still do score sheets on top of the 906 regulations, maybe that's something we can discuss.
Through the chair, I'll just add to Brian's comments. I think one of the rationales for why the score sheet wasn't working was there were problems with the score sheet, was especially in Port Dalhousie, we were running into issues where, because of the vernacular styles of architecture there, the score sheet just wasn't working because the properties are of kind of a different quality than you would expect maybe on Yates Street, right? So it was really hard. It's hard to get an apples to apples comparison. And so I think the sheet just wasn't working quite right for the group, and maybe it was coming to some conclusions that weren't working very well for us. So I think the systems work pretty well in terms of just measuring things against 906 and against the various guidelines in different heritage districts. So my inkling would be to continue as we're going. But if the group did feel that there was a desire to go back to that, it's something we could address in the future.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can bring that up at a future meeting. Did we have any other questions about the presentation? And I don't see any, so I guess we have to should have a motion to receive the presentation, and that it doesn't warrant designation. Mark, are you making the motion? Okay.
Yes, I'm making that motion.
Okay. Yeah, you were muted there. Okay.
Yeah.
So, all in favor? Okay. Done.
All right.
Okay. Moving on to item 8.2, the downtown HCD study update. James, take it away.
All right. So through the chair, it's been some time, I guess, since I've been with you. And so you're probably wondering what's going on with the Downtown Heritage District. Essentially, Lauren and I just finished reading a very long report, at least the first draft of the study is complete. We provided a lot of comments back to our consultants last week, met with them earlier this week and kind of set a timeline for how things are going to proceed going forward. Right now, we're targeting a mid-May council date, which is really exciting and coming up much quicker than you'd expect. It's only two and a half months away. So right now, our consultants are essentially just, tying up all the loose ends that we've asked them to tie up, hoping to have the report go public within the next probably week and a half, 2 weeks. They will be coming to the next Heritage Committee meeting to present their findings. So that'll be exciting. And that week as well, we're going to be targeting doing public information meeting, and the Downtown Heritage Committee Task Force is also going to meet. So we're going to have a bunch of opportunities for everybody to chime in at the end of March. Our consultants will then take all the feedback they've received. They'll make some updates to our report, and then council report will go to the mid-May council meeting. So everything will move very quickly over the next 2 months or so, and you'll hear a lot about it. And I'm hoping everybody will come out to all the different public meetings and stuff like that we're going to host, because we're going to need support. And I think there's a lot of good advocates in this group. So yeah, that's about it. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
I was just curious as to whether we've had much more negative kickback about the proposed HCD.
Through the chair, I think the people who felt negatively about the project initially are still feel the same. They maybe haven't been as vocal lately, but that's because there hasn't been much to really talk about lately. Our consultants have really been doing a lot of work over the last few months trying to get the report complete. So the last time we really were before the public was almost five months ago, maybe 6 months ago. So when you don't hear anything, there's no reason to kind of voice your opinion sometimes, right? So we fully expect those people to return, though, in the next few weeks, and especially as the report becomes public and people are able to read it and digest what the recommendations are. Yeah, there will certainly be some people who are opposed, but one of the interesting things, you might remember there was a survey that was submitted as part of it, or that was we asked the public to take as part of it. The first round of surveys had like 125 or so respondents, and it was like 80% were supportive. And this was across the city. So as much as there are people who are opposed to it, there was a large swath of the city that said, no, this is, something that we believe in. So it'll be really interesting to see, how council will measure, the thoughts of some of the downtown owners versus how the rest of the city feels about its downtown. It's a really challenging thing to do. So we'll see. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Lorraine, did you have a question?
I do have a question. James, you mentioned that it was going to go to council in mid-May, which brought up something that I've been thinking about for a while. I mentioned to you how I had heard about the presentation of 33 Lock at City Council and how well that went. I had a few friends who listened to it and told me how wonderful it was or how well it went. And so I've always wondered, is there a way to let the Heritage Committee know if there's going to be a heritage matter discussed at council ahead of time? So just to give us a heads up, and some of us might want to attend to hear what council says in regards to this to any heritage matter.
Yeah, through the chair, I think typically when we've gone to council for, let's say, a demolition, usually they're here and then they go to the almost very next council session, and I usually let you know when it's going to be going forward. I think the timing of this one, everything moved really quickly, and I unfortunately wasn't at the December meeting where this item was discussed with everyone. So at the time, I don't know if we fully knew when this was going to be going forward. But yeah, we definitely could have let you know through email at the very least that this was going forward. So apologies for that. But yeah, the Heritage District one, I definitely will make sure everybody is fully aware of when it's coming. And yeah, I'm sure you'll want to be there in attendance, and perhaps you even want to speak in favor of it or be opposed to it if you feel that way. But
or maybe not. But and you know what, James, I did not mean that as a complaint at all. All I just meant was that it's great to know about when things are going. And again, not a complaint to Lauren either. Just the idea that if there's a way to always make sure, and I know you've got a lot on your plate, so it's not that easy, but to make sure that we're aware if something's going to council that we might want to go and hear about.
Yeah, I think we can definitely do that. We only go to council for heritage matters, a few times a year, really.
Mhm.
We're kind of
Right.
lucky in that sense. We don't have a ton of demolitions coming forward and whatnot. So, but when they do come forward, we'd be more than happy to let everybody know.
And it doesn't have to be just demolitions, it's sort of
No,
anything.
I know.
Yeah.
It's just that's usually the reason we go to
Yes, yeah.
council. We don't have very many other than this heritage district study. We don't have a lot of reasons. But I guess as Lauren and the subcommittee that is tackling all the designations starts bringing some of those forward to council, it'll be kind of like a regular process that you'll be in the loop on.
Right. And again, not a complaint, just a suggestion.
Nope,
Thanks.
totally get it. Thanks.
Any other questions for James? No. And I guess maybe we should have a motion to receive his update. Robert, thank you. And all in favor? Okay. Is this where you wanted to maybe tack in 33 Lock?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah.
Okay.
So through the chair, so 30, as we were just discussing, 33 Lock was before council on Monday night. Council essentially voted to deny the demolition of the building there. It was a really interesting council meeting. There were, I mean, you might remember the application. It was an aggressive application from a building point of view in terms of what they were proposing, and council seemed to agree with that assessment. We couldn't support it from both a heritage perspective or a zoning perspective. And yeah, so council essentially, both myself and our planner made the argument that this was too big of a development for this site, and that the house itself also had significance from a heritage perspective and how it contributes to the heritage district. The arguments that the heritage consultant made were interesting. Basically suggested that the property didn't have cultural heritage value. I'm not sure if she was at the meeting in December and made similar arguments to you, so probably nothing new to you, but it was the first time I had heard them, so it was interesting. We just had different assessments of the cultural heritage value. Brian was very helpful in terms of helping pin down chain of ownership. And so we felt pretty confident that this building is of its vintage, and yeah, it definitely is much older than the 1950 cutoff that is in the Heritage District guidelines. So yeah, so we felt pretty good about the result. Council, agreed, and we're just waiting now to see if they will be taking it to the Ontario Land Tribunal, which is their right to do if they want to. We haven't heard anything yet, but they have 30 days essentially to submit an appeal. So that's where we are with that right now. If anybody has any questions, happy to answer.
Holly.
Through the chair, I watched the committee meeting on Cable 10, and it was fantastic. It was a long presentations by everyone, but very, very interesting. And James, you spoke very, very well. I just wanted to let you know you were very good on TV, on camera, and your voice came through very nice. And
Thanks, Holly.
just explained things very well. Yeah, it was very interesting to watch.
Andrew, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just, these are more observations than questions, but I was very interested in the approach they took to arguing in favor of demolition, and two of the things they cited, one was the fact that the property had no individual designation. And it brought to mind the fact that there's nothing in the Heritage Act that prevents a property in a Heritage District from having an individual designation. And it seemed clear to me that the lack of individual designation in this case was a point that they used to argue in favor of demolition. So I hate to say this, but I think maybe is anyone else having trouble hearing me? No? Okay. So that's something that we should think about. I hate to say it, but we may want to consider, certainly maybe in the case of exceptional properties, changing the policy against doing individual designations in heritage districts. I know in Port Dalhousie there were a number of individual designations that were repealed when the district came into place, and I have to think in retrospect that may have been a mistake. The second thing they cited as a justification for the demolition was the age and frailty of the guidelines, the district guidelines for Port Dalhousie. And as we know from our own experiences in some of these meetings, the age and it hasn't aged necessarily well and doesn't always serve its best purpose. So that's something to think about. And a reminder that it is not the oldest of the district guidelines in St. Catharines either. So I think that's something that we need to be mindful of moving forward. And that would be more critical. Both of these points would be more critical had they successfully used them to get the demolition permit. I'm relieved that they didn't, but I'm not entirely convinced that it was the heritage argument that swayed council. It may well simply have been the idea of a development of that scale at that critical intersection of Port Dalhousie that was the determining factor, rather than the heritage argument. So just things to I think that we need to consider moving forward.
Yeah, those are the valid points. I mean, some of those, HCD studies are approaching 35 years of age already. And, they probably should be, re-examined and maybe updated at some point. Lorraine, a question?
Just a sort of a comment and a suggestion. Andrew, I totally agree with you about those two pieces. And I'm wondering if we should actually make it a discussion at an upcoming meeting or subcommittee conversation, or that we should somehow or other decide what we're going to do, if we're going to do anything, if that's even, something we could do. I just think we need to not just drop it here. I think we need to do something about it, or at least figure out if we have the right to do something about it.
Through the chair, Lorraine, could you clarify? Do you mean whether we should look at more properties for individual designation, or do you mean look at the heritage district guidelines and see if those need updating?
Yes, sorry, and I meant both of those things. I was pretty vague. You're right. So, I just meant take a step back and have a further in-depth conversation about those two pieces. Do we need to do individual designations? That's one conversation. And the other conversation is about those guidelines. So I guess I just meant we need to further discuss those two areas of need as a group.
Yeah, I would say through the chair, I'm hesitant to do individual designation or evaluate every property individually that's in a heritage district. I think the culture heritage value, it's already designated a property if it's in a heritage district, right? It qualifies under Part 5. And the culture heritage value has been determined at the time when it was designated. And so in our case, anything older than 1950 in Port Dalhousie is considered contributing. And that to me is enough based on the guidelines. Somebody could have challenged those 20 some odd years ago when Port Dalhousie was created, but they didn't. My concern is in a heritage district, you're supposed to be looking at everything as a collection, right? And each property individually might not merit designation under Part 4, but under Part 5, it's already been determined that there's significance there. And so I would much rather lean on that. I don't know of any, I haven't heard of any, and maybe Lauren can jump in as well, issues where a property has been designated under Part 5 and then looked at under Part 4 and been determined that it doesn't meet the criteria for designation, and then the designation gets repealed or anything like that. Usually Part 5 designations hold up. So I'd be really concerned about looking at every property individual, especially in Port Dalhousie, where sometimes you're dealing with very vernacular style buildings, but as a collective, it tells a story, right? So, and then your other piece was, updating the HCD guidelines and the various guidelines. If not for the Downtown Heritage District study, updating things like the Port Dalhousie guidelines was very much high on my list. And then Bill 23 came. And so we had to kind of pivot and, direct our funds and our attention towards things like, protecting all of our listed properties. And that's where the Downtown Heritage District study came in. I fully agree. I think that these guidelines, they're not that they're outdated, they've worked well, but I think the language that we use in some of them is a little dated and maybe we wouldn't use it today. And also just to see, are they serving their purpose, right? So if an HCD that like Yates or Queen, which both I think were from the 90s, are they working? Like, have we ever gone back to actually look to see, are we getting the results that we wanted? I think in both those heritage districts, I think they are working quite well. Port Dalhousie, I think, is a mixed bag. I think sometimes we've had really good results and sometimes we've had some questionable ones. But I think a review is definitely warranted. It's just, unfortunately, we have so many other priorities right now, right? So maybe once we get past this hurdle, it might be something in the future that we take a look at. Because yeah, I think they definitely merit it for sure.
So I was just basically suggesting we move it to another meeting, but maybe we don't need to. You know,
We have
right?
time to discuss now if you want.
No, that's okay. Thanks, James. I appreciate your opinion and your thoughts on this, on both of those things.
And Lauren, feel free to jump in here.
Yeah, no, I mean the question of whether something should have to be Part 4 designated, like after it's already has a Part 5 designation. I mean traditionally, like most municipalities didn't remove Part 4 designations when they did Part 5. But once it's Part 5, like that's considered sufficient to protect the property. And it's unless there's something truly exceptional about the building, like on the interior or something that needs to be protected. But even then, like yeah, I think only in the case where there's an interior element would we consider Part 4 designation, because Part 5 does consider that the cultural landscape and the exterior and its placement within the district. And so I think very, very rarely, if ever, I've never heard of someone designating something Part 4 after it has Part 5 designation. So not concerned about that, but do agree with James that taking another look at our HCD plans, and just so they can reflect the current planning context and the type of applications that we're receiving, and provide additional guidance on some of the cases that we're seeing, would be useful. And I agree. Yep.
I think a good example is lately we've been having a lot of applications for kind of laneway houses, right? Like
Yeah.
kind of the extra additional units that are being built at the rear of properties. When all these HCD guidelines were created, this was not even on the radar, right? So it's like, how do we approach those? I think would be really interesting. And right now, we've done a good job, I think, of being able to manage with the guidelines that we have. But I think addressing kind of the modern kind of context of how planning has changed and heritage has changed, yeah, they could definitely be rolled into new updates for sure.
Yeah, agreed.
Maria.
Yes, thank you. James, I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind explaining to me the use of the word vernacular in the context of heritage. I understand the meaning in a typical use in our language, but how will I best understand it when used with heritage descriptions of homes and properties, please?
Yeah, through the chair. I don't know if I have a great definition of it other than it's more of like a utilitarian kind of look. It's not ornate. It's more, working class housing. It's housing that maybe doesn't fit a particular style as well. It might not be a Victorian Gothic style, or it might not be Edwardian. So for example, a house like the one that Lauren just discussed, really, for the most part, you could make an argument is vernacular because it doesn't really fully fit into like a particular style or exhibit. It might exhibit multiple different elements, right? So it's kind of a catch-all term that we use in the heritage field sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lauren, do you have
Yeah.
anything? You're better with that
I
stuff.
I mean, I like the way I kind of see it is it's the architectural language of the common person at the whatever era it comes out of. So it's the type of house that, just a guy or a family was just building a house, and they got a builder and they started building what the style that would be built at that time according to the technology and according to the taste at the time, without any sort of like special consideration to architectural style or ornamentation, just something that you would build, to build a house for your family. And so it's like it is they usually are reflective of their time. So a vernacular house from the Victorian era would look different than a vernacular Edwardian or a vernacular in the 1920s. But they all have this kind of like, this is just the generic like architectural language of the time. And so that's why we call it vernacular, and usually does have, you know, a mix of things that people are just taking from houses they like that they've seen and mixing it in. So yeah.
Thank you.
The house that Jack built.
Yes, I'm thinking of my own house in that case. Thank you.
Lorraine.
Just thinking about vernacular too, and thanks for that question, Maria, because I have written it down as I need to figure this out in context as well. But I'm thinking that, do you remember the houses on Lundy's Lane in St. Catharines? And a few years ago, before you, James, that I was sent to go and look to see if they should be designated. And really, they belong to early Welland Canal workers. And it was the style of the times, but there really was nothing there. You know, poor area. You know, just and it had workers for the early canal when the canal used to go by there. And I think that's what I think of as vernacular. Is that right, James? Is that kind of what you mean?
If I recall those buildings, I think so. Like they're small workers' cottages, essentially.
Small workers' cottages,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would probably fall under that. I'd have to go back and look, but I don't remember them really falling under any other style. But yeah.
Right. Okay, thanks. And thanks, Maria.
Any other questions about that presentation?
And through the chair, I've put in the chat. We don't usually use the chat as much as we have today. I've put in the chat a link actually to a website that I find super useful. It's ontarioarchitecture.com, and it's essentially just a website that talks about different architectural styles. And you know, it's a really good resource just for trying to, you know, if you're looking at a house and you think, well, what is that? And then it even sorts it out chronologically, so you can kind of figure out like what era it's from. Fantastic site, really useful. Might just be a good one to bookmark.
Thank you.
Fortunately, it doesn't include vernacular, so
Okay.
you're out of luck there. But all the other ones it has.
Thank you.
And there's a couple of books that were published. Trying to remember the name of the one author. Is he Blumenstein? Blumenthal, something like that. And he wrote a fairly comprehensive book on styles of Ontario architecture from the 1780s to, you know, the present time. And he has chapters, you know, talking about, you know, Georgian architecture, you know, Victorian Gothic, Classicism, right down to like, you know, the international style and Art Deco and so on. It's quite a good book. If anybody's interested, I can send the a link out for the title. And it's still available, I think, on used book sites and that. Lauren?
Interesting because like I'm working with Nishita, and she's helping with one of our properties for evaluation. And so I actually went looking for these resources. I provided Ontario Architecture to her, but also these books, which are the classic like Ontario architectural style books. A lot of them are actually available on a website called Internet Archive, and they've scanned it. And they're all available to view online. So I sent them to Nishita in an email, but I can also send them around to the committee. Just as you know, if you're interested, the Blumenson book was Ontario Architectural Styles it's online, available scanned for free. It kind of works like a library where you maybe have to make an account and check out the book. But yeah, it's really amazing. And these are books that, you know, I throughout my career have used extensively, and so it's great that they're online now. Yeah.
And I have another one actually right here, which is Ontario
Yeah.
House Styles. Nice book as well. Very nice pictures and whatnot in it. I flip through this one all the time when I need to remind myself of certain things as well. So there's lots of really good actually books and resources out there to use if you're interested. So
Okay. I guess we should have a motion to receive your update on 33 Lock. Lorraine, thank you. And all in favor? Okay. Moving on to item 9.1, the designations subcommittee. I guess we're doing an update on that.
I just through the chair really quickly. Not a lot to talk about. We had our meeting a couple weeks ago with the designation subcommittee. It was a relatively short meeting. It was mostly to focus on, the 2025 work plan and to set some like internal deadlines for putting together some research and some people taking on volunteering to take on some tasks like you take photos and work on the land use histories. And so just the update is that, the committee is continues to work diligently, and, we hope to have some evaluations ready to take to committee within the next couple of months. I think previously we had spoken about, putting together a couple of evaluations and then presenting them to the committee and as like a larger package. But we are moving forward with that and look forward to sharing the work.
Thank you. Do you have any questions about the update? So I guess we need a motion to receive. Holly, I saw your hand go up first. Thank you. And all in favor? Okay. I guess we don't have any items of correspondence to chit chat about. Did you want to introduce Nishita?
I think I introduced her as much as I am personally capable of. But if Nishita, if you have an interest in turning on your camera and saying hi to everyone, here's Nishita, our new planning student. She's going to be helping with our minutes and some other projects over the next couple of months. And Nishita, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Nishita. I'm the new planning student. Yeah, I'm gonna help out with the committee. I'm researching 15 Welland Avenue right now, and I'm also taking the minutes for the meeting.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, I guess if there's nothing else, then I guess we're moving on to the date of our next meeting, which will be March the 27th. Same bat time, same bat station. And then I guess adjournment now, or termination, as Patrick Little would like to say. So do you have a motion to adjourn? Oh, Mark? You're on mute.
Yep. Well, here. Were we going to talk about 109 Church? I know that was a last minute addition.
Yeah. So I spoke to the applicant for that grant application, and they asked to defer to next month. Okay. So it won't be as much of a rush. I'll probably redistribute all of the materials, and I know I have some questions from committee members already. So if you have any questions about it or concerns, you forward them to me, and I can incorporate them into the consideration next month.
Okay, thanks.
Wonderful.
So I guess next meeting, March 27th. Adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Robert, you look like you're
sure.
You look like you're not sure if you want to adjourn today or not. Okay. So all in favor of that? So it's 3:30 according to the clock on my desk. So that's it for today, folks. We'll see you later in March.
Thanks,
Nice
everyone.
to see you all.
Thanks all.
See you then.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.